don't have to take on the expense and manage, hiring and a staff. They can use those funds instead for other well-needed services. And Firefly Tutors, we're experts at organizing and achieving successful tutoring programs with schools, for parents, and especially for students. And, we offer options where we can either meet the students at the school, like I mentioned. That could be during school hours. I know some schools opt for that. It could be after school, or we can arrange it independently through every single parent. And the schools, they just kind of fund that experience for specific students who are not at grade level, and they want to bring them up to grade level. And, I think so many schools have communicated to us that historically they have the same students year after year who have fallen behind, and we just really want to catch them up. And that's really exciting when we do that. I think that's what we're seeing more and more with the in-home tutoring.
Hello, my fellow school leaders. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder at TomoClub. And today on our TomoClub podcast series, we have the CEO of Firefly Tutors, Diane Lewis. This is the first time we are having a podcast with another education company because otherwise we usually interact with school leaders. So I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of school leaders out there to also understand how educational companies operate, what are their perspective while working with schools and parents. So I think this is a very unique opportunity. It's a very interesting experiment, but thank you for so much agreeing to be on a part of the show, and welcome, Diane.
My pleasure, Avinash. It's so interesting to hear more about your company as well.
No, absolutely. We actually had a long discussion even before we hit record. So I was like, we got to pause and we should start record. Otherwise, we are losing a lot of interesting content that people would definitely want to dig in. But it's been fantastic. And I think your journey has been very inspiring to me as well. Starting like when you shared about your father, how much he has worked upon, and the memoir that you have written for him, plus the entire company that you have shaped up. I think it's very inspiring. So I'll just jump on to the first question.
Okay.
Tell us more about Firefly Tutors, the origin, the thought process, the problem that you're solving.
Yes, with Firefly Tutors, it actually started out of desperation. I got a divorce 21 years ago after 25 years of marriage, and I just needed more income. And I thought, what could I do? And I had only taught as a teacher in public school for 3 years. I didn't really like public school teaching. That classroom experience was not fun for me because I saw how differently every child needed to learn. But I was told by my very traditional principal at the time, no, you can't teach that way, do it all the same. And I became very disillusioned. So I went into a completely different career for a while. And then at that point in my life where I wanted to earn more, I called every person I knew who had children, and I told them what I was doing as far as tutoring. And I started with one child at my dining room table. And within a year, just off referrals, I had 21 students. But the best part for me was those kids were loving me and putting love back into my heart, which felt so broken in that moment. And so I just knew that was my calling, and I was experiencing so much joy seeing them progress and become great students. And so somehow it evolved from there.
Wow, no, that's an inspiring story, honestly. From one child to the 21 students in the entire year. So congratulations on that. So help us understand, like, did the students come to your home, or did you go to their home? What's the logistics look like?
In the very beginning, I ran it right out of my home at my dining room table. But then I went to some sort of networking event where they had a hiring coach speaking, and I listened to them, and they said, it could be, you could be able to take a hobby or something you're doing part-time and turn it into a real business. And it was right then that light bulb moment came on for me. And I thought, if I hire another tutor, I could double my business. And if I hired 3 tutors, I could triple my business like that. And so it just kind of evolved from there. And it's been a real fun journey.
No, absolutely. So help us understand still, like the other hires that you had in your company, did they go to the student's house to teach? Or
Yes. So after that, yes, as soon as I hired my first tutor, we switched to in-home tutoring.
Okay. So explain this a little bit more, that what problem is in-home tutoring solving, which is better than schools in the first place, or center-based options, because there are a lot of um, organizations who are working out of learning centers. And how does, what problem is specifically in-home tutoring solving for?
Yes, I mean, there are so many options that can be chosen for tutoring. Schools are doing as great a job as they possibly can, and yet they're struggling, unfortunately, and not meeting the needs of all students. And it's not the school's fault, it's not necessarily the district's fault. It's about our policymakers and funding, unfortunately. But I think overall, teachers and administrators are really trying hard. What we can do through tutoring, and specifically in-person tutoring, is make it simple and easy for parents. So we match their schedule and come right to them at their convenience, or we can meet in libraries as well. I think it takes a lot of pressure off students. Many are afraid to raise their hand in classrooms. They don't want to be looked upon by other students as dumb, or be bullied because they didn't know the answer to something. And it can be, a very depressing kind of situation for a child when they feel less than in the classroom. And it's not the teacher's fault necessarily. It's just I think the culture of society right now. And so we just eliminate that and take it off the table completely. And when a tutor is working directly with a student over and over, week after week, I think they build a tremendous bond where that tutor finds different ways based on the student's interests and hobbies, and they relate the curriculum to that student in ways that the teacher can't necessarily do in a classroom.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I've been also interacting with a lot of educators. So there are a lot of students who fall through the cracks, and without anybody's fault. So giving that personalized one-on-one support is also not possible, although schools are using a lot of new tech stack to solve that for. And so yeah, I'll come to that aspect as well, that how does your business still remains resilient. But before that, I want to know, what's an ideal age of students that you usually cater to? Because when I grew up, the in-home tutoring was a thing for elementary students, and as students get into middle school or high school, either they tend to go to some kind of group study coaching centers, like learning centers, or something else. So what's your age bracket of kids that you are dealing with mostly?
We deal with students pre-K or TK, transitional kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade, and even those in college. So we do help adult students as well. But dealing with the schools, of course, it wouldn't matter whether it was elementary, middle, or high school. We've run intervention programs for many schools and districts based on their need. And we can offer it in a variety of ways. We can come to the school and we can work with students individually. We can create pods where the students are all struggling with the same concepts and group them with one tutor, or we can offer that one-on-one tutoring in the students' homes.
No, that makes sense. I would like to again dig a little bit more. I understand your offering is from TK to 12. What's your majority audience coming from? Like, who are
all of it.
who are those people who are signing up more than anyone else?
I would say the majority of our students have made a choice to homeschool. Okay. And that's a growing entity in society across the United States today. It's growing in every state. And so we've just chosen to market to that segment of the population because so many parents are not trained to be the primary teacher for their child. And
Right.
if in many states, if they do enroll their child in an accredited home charter school, they do receive funding to help pay for tutoring.
No, yeah, absolutely. I've read a lot, I've heard a lot about the ESA aspect in which the parents now can directly claim for that money if they're not sending their child to public school. And that definitely give them more choices to get services and product from the approved vendor list. So do you register yourself as an approved vendor to get that ESA benefit?
Yes. So we are an approved vendor or provider in, I think, 57 homeschools or districts in California. We're also in Arizona and Florida.
So is it not like a statewide thing? Do you literally need to do the registration for each district?
In California, it works that way, unfortunately. Yes. I wish it were different. It would be a lot easier from my end. But in Florida, it's just they have one funding system, and every child in the state can take advantage of it.
No, absolutely. I've been hearing that Florida and Arizona are the ones who are definitely leading the baton in the case of effective ESA implementation. California is also, but this 57 district registration must be hard, but I'm glad you pulled that off. Is there also any kind of like, because students have their own needs, like from the neurodiverse students with different IEPs or with learning disabilities or students, like, do you have any kind of persona where you cannot offer your services?
Not really. No. I think many students with learning differences do gravitate to homeschool in many cases if the parent has that ability. And, not all of them have the freedom to do that. They work, they just can't seem to juggle. They have, maybe 6 kids, not just one child. And it becomes very challenging for the parent. But some of these parents are impressive, and I don't even know how they juggle their schedules. But in the case of working with students who do have learning differences, that's part of our brand is we will find a new way for that child to learn. I'll give you a simple example. If the child is struggling with reading comprehension, and that's certainly, something that at least 50% of the students across the United States are struggling with, they're not at grade level proficiency. Yeah. So we might do some simple exercises that work with all grade levels, fiction, nonfiction reading, it doesn't matter. And so we ask the child to, with their tutor, to just read a short paragraph and then give them 5 seconds to draw a stick figure of whatever they remember, and then keep reading, drawing, reading, drawing. And they're using a variety of senses with this method, and it's simple. Kids love to draw, they giggle with their drawings, and it keeps them engaged. But what they're doing is they see the words, they speak the words, they hear the words, and then they visualize it in their brain like a movie in order to draw it with their pen or pencil. And they can then sequence all these little windows like a comic strip. They sequence them together, and they can put a lot of the ideas together and get the main grasp, along with coaching from their tutor. But when we teach a student to use this method for reading, they can start reading with confidence and more independence. And that's really what we're after. We want learners to become more independent.
No, absolutely. That's a very genuine problem, that there is a learning difference. So a 7th grader might have a 5th grade reading capability, and they still have to power through without saying a word in a grade 7. So that's a definite huge problem. And even I remember as growing up that if I have missed a class in my grade 5 and there's a topic that I've missed altogether, it remains like a nightmare throughout my K-12 journey. So yeah, and never got the chance to clear those concepts. So your problem identification is definitely right on. just want to like I'm getting like a clear picture of your entire business model, and there are a few more doubts on the unique selling point aspect. Like, do you also do Zoom sessions with students one on one, or is it like only in person?
We can offer online when parents request that instead. And we find that sometimes, at least older students prefer that,
Hmm.
or sometimes parents are on the go. We work with a lot of high profile parents or high profile students who have vigorous, uh, they're just always on the go. They travel a lot. And so for them, the online can work. So we like to book them with a tutor that can work in person when they are in town at their residence. But if they are traveling, certainly that tutor can just switch to online.
No, makes sense. So I understand the fact that in one side you directly are reaching out to parents, or parents are reaching out to you for your services. But I want to understand a little bit more about the B2B aspect. Like, whenever a school district is uh, for the intervention part or at home tutoring, so a lot of districts also have funds to sponsor that part. So what is the main decision making look like at the school end? Like, how do they what are the biggest concern they have when they're hiring you or bringing you to the table? So just want to understand your B2B journey with working with schools.
Yes, that's a very important question. I think one of the benefits to schools or districts hiring an established company like Firefly Tutors is they don't have to take on the expense and manage, hiring and a staff. They can use those funds instead for other well-needed services. And Firefly Tutors, we're experts at organizing and achieving successful tutoring programs with schools for parents and especially for students. And we offer options where we can either meet the students at the school, like I mentioned. That could be during school hours. I know some schools opt for that. It could be after school, or we can arrange it independently through every single parent. And the schools, they just kind of fund that experience for specific students who are not at grade level and they want to bring them up to grade level. And, I think so many schools have communicated to us that historically they have the same students year after year who have fallen behind, and we just really want to catch them up. And that's really exciting when we do that. I think that's what we're seeing more and more with the in-home tutoring.
No, absolutely. Just out of curiosity, doesn't that how does that sit well with the teacher union aspect? Like, because a lot of schools are trying to get asset light by having the teachers on contract basis, or having the at least the support staff, intervention or tutoring staff, at least on contractual. But I've been hearing some reports from schools and districts that it doesn't sit really well with the teachers union. Have you faced anything like that in your?
I've heard the same thing. Just to give you an idea, we hire at Firefly Tutors, we hire credentialed teachers. In fact, each of our education consultants who speak with teachers, who speak with parents directly, and determine which tutor is going to work with each individual student based on their learning style, their what's needed for that student to succeed. And they coach each of our tutors. And also, all of our tutors are college graduates with at least 2 or more years of teaching or tutoring experience. So they don't have to be credentialed necessarily, but we want them to know how to relate the curriculum to students. So getting back to your question, I think the teachers union, I don't know a lot about it because I'm not part of it. I was way back eons ago, but at this point, I understand where they're coming from. They want jobs, they want to be paid correctly, and deservingly so. I'm just not really in that world.
No, I understand that fact, but I think it's, and of course, since you are also providing employment in a way, you are also a teacher, apart, like you're working for them rather than against them. That's completely understandable. But it's just that in a lot of districts, the major, if you look at the teachers' remuneration part, the half part of them is the benefits and the half is actually the base salary. So I think that's one of the reasons that they're like, it's going to be definitely cheaper for the superintendent or the school board to go out working with contractual, because like you said, they don't have to manage the staff. They don't have to, because hiring itself is a 6 months cost. So if you're paying like a staff $50,000 to $70,000, you are going to pay 6 months salary in hiring and getting value out of it, because that's a huge problem. And also, if I think about it, there are a lot of companies, like huge companies in the tutoring space, like Princeton Review is there, Varsity is there, um, even like I went to a few conferences, and these are one of the major sponsors, because that's a huge area where schools are looking for services out there. So how do you compete in such a saturated or crowded space?
I don't consider it saturated. I think that we're putting out great service and we focus on keeping the students' needs in the spotlight. The students are the stars of the show. And if we're doing our job, students are progressing, students are advancing, they're gaining confidence, they're able to apply what they're learning on a daily basis. And we see that over and over. And so I think there are so many students who need help that it's not necessarily saturated. I mean, we have a big job to do, and every parent, every school has a choice to make on which platform they want to use to get that job done. But really, it's all about the students, and they need help.
No, I think that's very rightly put. And I love that you came up with that answer, because if the problem is not solved, it's not saturated at all, right? Maybe e-commerce right now is saturated because we may not need another Amazon. So in that case, it's a very competitive, a very like a hard battle. But you're right, in terms of tutoring, the problem is largely unsolved for. So yeah, I really appreciate that answer. Um, Now, also just want to understand that how do you approach these customers? Like, what's your go-to market strategy look like? How can you deconstruct that, whether it is uh, individuals or whether it is schools? How do you work out the sales cycle? How do you do the delivery? Would love to know that.
Well, we have a marketing team, and they're probably better at expressing this answer better than I am. But at the same time, because we are on the approved vendor list with so many charter schools in California, that gives us a lot of exposure. And many of the schools do offer advertising opportunities. They're, small, but we do take advantage of anything the school offers that we can put out there to share with parents, but also connect with the administrative team at the school. And I think once we establish a reputable kind of feel through the parents and through the teachers, a buzz begins to start. And, a lot of times an administrator will say, I've heard a lot of good things about Firefly Tutors, and so I love hearing that, of course. And so that's where we just do a good job, and we want to make sure that every child's needs are met, that every parent is happy with their tutor and the results that their child is starting to show. And, when that happens, I think everybody's happy.
No, absolutely. And now, definitely, with all those questions, anybody who is listening to our podcast will understand the gist of the company operations. Now, I want to talk about how are you able to deliver such great results. Of course, what's your selections criteria of your tutors, and you told us one strategy of how your visualizations stick with students for their reading ability. Can you give us more ideas on math proficiency, how you're working on that, and the hiring strategy for tutors?
Yes, we do run a rigorous hiring process for selecting tutors. Like I mentioned, they are college graduates with 2 or more years of experience teaching or tutoring. But we also want them, like you mentioned earlier, is we want our tutors to lead with compassion and empathy and know how to relate the curriculum for each different student. And so that's part of our brand. That's just what we do. And we use a lot of multi-sensory integration whenever needed, as long as it's okay with parents. And with parent permission, we will also bring enrichment material to reinforce what the student is learning through their regular curriculum. Any kind of extra practice they might need or three-dimensional type learning can go a long ways with many students with learning differences because they have to become more sensory integrated into it. I mean, we've had tutors almost create like I guess like a video game where the child is moving around the room and throwing things at flat, like giant flashcards, here's the answer, here's my beanbag or my sock that I'm throwing at it. And it just becomes a fun experience for them.
Oh, absolutely. Tell me about it. I love gaming, and I think gaming is a insanely great pedagogy to teach students. And when you said 3D, does that mean tangible, like projects or like models? Is that what you're referring when you said 3D?
Sure. Project learning is not only is essential at this point in time, but it's more memorable. We all remember when we learn something by doing it much more than just reading about it.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. In fact, all those school concepts that are still retained today were because there is a memory associated with it, whether it was a project or it's kind of any kind of role playing that teacher did in the classroom or the story. I think humans works on stories, right? That's how they tend to remember things, not facts, not figures, not theories. It's the stories which really sell. And yeah, but your record is impeccable. Like I was going through your website and like talking from student gaining from 30 to 70% in the core skills. That's phenomenal. I think congratulations on that. And I just want to understand, like, is that the core metric that students, like parents or schools, also track, or what all school track to 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 calculate the ROI of working with Firefly tutors?
Yeah, we let the schools run their own assessments. So they, of course, do the assessment before we start and the assessment afterwards. So they actually make their determination on their own. And they send us the results. And a lot of them do have comments from both parents and teachers, and we love hearing those. And so that's how we can always improve and always, like celebrate each student's success, because that's what it's about, is really celebrating their hard work. And we congratulate our tutors that way too. I do have one more idea that I can share regarding math. Over the last couple decades, I have seen the language of math change. It's not that math changes, because math is math, but because there are now probably thousands of different publishers of curriculum for math, what I've noticed is students are getting lost and can't figure out what they're asked to do in math. Just the word add can now be represented by, 7 or 8 different terms. And, whether it's a first grader or a second grader, sometimes they don't know what group together means, or they don't know what combine means or compute. They just don't know what these terms mean. And so on an assessment, especially, kids are rushing through and they just guess. If they don't know something, they guess just to fill it in. And what we have found is if we can teach them the language of math in a way that works for them, they can go a lot further, and it does fill in those gaps. A little second grader who doesn't know, if a word problem asks them to find the difference between 2 numbers, do they know that means subtract? And in many cases, they don't. But if we put the equation in front of them, they can solve the equation.
No, I agree with you. I think math has always been a English challenge too, in a lot of ways. Like I remember I like when we were taught greater than, lesser than, and equal to. It took me a while in that time as well to understand that concept. And yeah, it's always a understanding the language and the context also equally important in math. So yeah, great work on that. Uh, Now, of
I
course,
do want to mention real quick, sorry to interrupt, Avinash, but I have another appointment. I'm going to be on video call in 10 minutes. So,
yeah, we're just finishing. I just want to ask you the most hot question that's in my mind is about the AI aspect. We all saw so many promotional videos coming from OpenAI or Gemini that you can talk to a AI and it can act like a AI tutor. Or in terms of scaffolding too, there are a lot of AI tools which will not give you the answer directly, but rather guide you through a journey so that you reach the answer rather than just spitting it out. So how is AI impacting your business? And like, is it helping you guys to cut down your cost because you also started providing AI tutors in the future, or you guys are getting competition and getting drop offs?
there is a lot of controversy involved in that. And so we always want to make sure that a parent is okay if AI is used during a tutoring session and it's used responsibly. And we do teach students how they can use it in a very positive way. At the same time, I use it myself every day, like a whole bunch of times during the day. It's such an incredible tool for me and saves me a lot of time. I know my marketing director uses it all the time. And so I think it's helping everyone who wants to embrace it, who wants to learn how to use it as a ginormous tool. It's fantastic. It's not hard to learn. It's more about language. It's more about teaching AI to understand our thought process and our inquisitive mind, and then be able to also, if we get certain answers, we can then just ask for more in a different way, and let's tweak this just a little bit more. Give it to me from this perspective, or in a variety of perspectives, so that we can really see a 360-degree angle of whatever we're viewing and want to understand. And I think that in itself hopefully will help more people get along with each other. And in the workforce, I think it's going to be a game changer.
No, absolutely. So are you also looking at having AI tutors in the future where you don't need to hire human tutors at your end?
I haven't thought about that. I mean, I have thought about it, but we're not moving in that direction. No decision has been made at this point.
Okay. Because like I was talking to a lot of tutoring companies in a conference, and the AI tutor aspect can definitely help a lot in, like, of course, profitability increase, because they can work 24/7.
Yeah.
So
it's free.
plus not even like taking up the entire tutoring job, but they can always act like an assistant to the tutor. So whether coordinating with students for getting a check-in, whether they have done that assignment, sending them reminders, or all the kind of administrative tasks that a tutor also has to do along with teaching. At least on that aspect, AI can immediately help. So have you guys incorporated that kind of tools at your end?
Not really. We're really not moving in that direction at this point. I'm not opposed to it, but we just haven't moved forward in that way. And I so apologize, but I do have to jump off in just a minute here.
No, absolutely. But yeah, this was fantastic talking to you, Diane. I think we got a good idea of how tutoring companies are operating, and Firefly Tutors is definitely doing a lot of great things here. So thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.